Greetings, y'all. Sit tight, get comfortable, grab a nice drink if you need it, because we've got a chock full video here tonight. I've almost been dreading doing this one because there are so many CDs to go through. We are talking about The Who, my first favorite band. I was introduced to them by my brother, who was a fan, and when I first got into like buying music and everything in like 1981, that was the band I was into. So we got a ton here to go through. I already did a video on my Who vinyl. I'll put a link below if you want to check that out. We're only talking about CDs here tonight. But I'm not going to pretend that I'm like this historian when it comes to The Who. They were my favorite band. I really like them. I've seen them live. But I'm not going to, there are people, some of you out there watching, probably a lot of you who are watching, know this band far better than I do. You probably know these albums way better than I do. I wouldn't say I'm a casual fan, but, you know, I just can't, like, you know, I've read a couple of books. I read Pete Townshend's book. I read like a bunch of years ago, I read some Who book that the title's escaping me, but I think it was kind of like, you know, the book that everybody kind of considered like the definitive history of the band. I read that, but, you know, I'm not going to pretend I know everything. I'm just going to show what I've got in the collection and maybe pick a couple of songs from each album that I like and show you the booklets and stuff. So let's begin. 1965, their first full-length album, My Generation. There's different versions of this. Most of these that I have are like the 1995 MCA reissued, remastered ones. All these albums, they've been re-released multiple times. The Who are kind of famous for that. But yeah, I mean, they burst on the scene with some of these tunes, did a lot of singles. Here I go, trying to pretend like I know the history of the band, right? Oh, well. And here you got the booklet. Some liner notes in here. I'm sure there are other versions of this album that have way deeper liner notes than that. Some great tracks on here. My Generation, The Kids Are Alright, Illegal Matter, The Ox. I love Illegal Matter. That's one of my favorite Who songs of all time. So yeah, there's My Generation. 1966. We get their first stab. The Who are famous for these like rock operas and everything, and this is sort of their first stab at that. This is a quick one, and they do kind of like a mini rock opera in this one. And MCA just did an amazing job with these remasters. I mean, there might be some of you out there who might have some different takes on the sound quality or whatever. To me, they sound fine. I'm not, you know, super like audiophile man or whatever, but like the booklets on all these MCA remastered reissues are just phenomenal. They just really went all out, you know, with the liner notes, and they kind of give you some history and they kind of break down the tracks one by one. Just really like, I mean, I could think of a bunch of bands that I'm fans of that I would love if their label, when they did remasters or reissues, I wish they had done them the way MCA did these. But like I said, they kind of take their first stab at this mini rock opera, quick one while he's away. And these MCA reissues also came with a bunch of bonus tracks. So you got stuff on here like alternate versions, unreleased stuff, some singles, things like that. But Boris the Spider's on here, which is a great one. They do a good cover of Heat Wave that I kind of like. But yeah, another great record by The Who. And when I originally got into Who, I was buying cassettes. And when I bought this, I had a lot of these on cassettes back in the day. When I had this, it was a double cassette. It had a quick one on it, and the next album, 1967, The Who Sell Out. So my cassette had the two of those. I'm sure a bunch of you are familiar with that. And another kind of, this is another kind of like concept record that Who take on, sort of like mimicking a pirate radio station that they were familiar with in London, they grew up with. And again, MCA just did a phenomenal job with these booklets, with just giving you so much information. I've read all these back in the day, and if I was a better video YouTube person, I probably would have read these before I made this video, so I could sit here and pontificate on all the history of this album, but I didn't. I'm sorry. But as you can see, again, they just did a phenomenal job breaking down the album and all the tracks and the history of the recording of this. This is an album I remember. I know a lot of people are big fans of this album, but I remember this an album that just never really connected with me 100%. You know, and you know, so it's not that familiar. It's not an album I listen to a ton. I Can See for Miles is on here. Marianne with the Shaky Hands, really good as well. But again, it's not an album I spent a lot of time listening to growing up, but a good one nonetheless. And then we get to 1969, and they're kind of like, you know, the album that kind of brings them to this next level. Of course, we're talking about Tommy, their big rock opera. You know, this is what the band is like really known for. And this is where they kind of really make it all come together. And it kind of, you know, these ideas that Pete Townshend had of doing these rock operas and telling these stories, these concept records. This is where it all kind of comes to fruition. Look at me. Look at the phrasing I'm using. Comes to fruition. How many YouTube record video people are using those kinds of words? Oh, probably a lot of them. Who am I kidding? I don't know words well. But yeah, this is a great record. The movie's pretty wacky. I've seen it a few times. I kind of like it, but it is definitely a little odd. I think Ken Russell directed that. I'm pretty sure. But pretty interesting film. But really good record. It's a record that I like this, but I don't know that I've spent, like I always think I really need to just sit down and put this on and just really listen to it and pay attention, because I've listened to it a bunch of times, but I feel like I've never really absorbed this album. Pinball Wizard, of course, is a big tune on here that everybody's familiar with. Tommy, Can You Hear Me? Amazing Journey. Yeah, great record by The Who. Then we get the definitive live record by The Who from 1970. We get Live at Leeds. This has been released a million different ways. The original version only had about 5 songs on it, I believe. And there are other versions that have way more tracks than this. And it's just a great, you know, sort of snapshot of the band, like, you know, just at their peak, really, you know, just, you know, firing on all cylinders, for, if you want me to use some cliche terms to describe the performance. But yeah, just a great live performance of The Who, captured. I think they recorded a couple of shows and then picked the best one. I think they released, you know, Who's released a million live records. I think one of the shows that could have been this album was recorded at Hull, and they've released that since as like Live at Hull with similar artwork. But on this one, you know, Young Man Blues, Happy Jack, they do a great version of Summertime Blues. They do a 15-minute version of My Generation and a great version of Magic Bus. But yeah, just like quintessential live record. You know, many people consider this the best live record ever released by a rock band. Then we have 1971. We get a compilation, Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy. I remember having this on cassette when I was a kid growing up, and I would just like listen to that cassette nonstop, playing basketball in the driveway, just have this on nonstop. And it's just a collection of a lot of their singles from up until this period. I'll always love this artwork. If I could get the booklet out, I'd show you, where they have picture of these kids who were supposed to be The Who on the front cover, and The Who looking out at them. There's not much inside, but you can see this used to be the back of the album, where it's The Who on the stoop and the young kids who were supposed to be them looking out the window. That's it. This wasn't part of like those remaster reissues MCA put out, so there's not all these great liner notes, but it's a great compilation. If you're a casual fan of The Who, you can't really go wrong with this one. I Can't Explain, Kids Are Alright, Happy Jack, I Can See for Miles, My Generation, Substitute, great compilation from The Who. And then we get from 1971 as well, we get Who's Next. This is the beginning of the infamous Lifehouse journals of Pete Townshend, this project that he had been trying to put together. And I mean, it's still like haunting him to this day. They just put out a big massive box set called Who's Next Lifehouse Project or something like that. He's, you know, returned to this idea that he had for this project called Lifehouse many times, you know, in solo work, in The Who, and just never seems to have been able to break it, you know, and just never captured what he was trying to do, you know, and probably and never will, you know. I mean, it just seems like one of those projects that's gonna haunt him till the day he dies. But it's interesting, and so they scrapped the Lifehouse project, and I'm not even going to try to explain what it was, but they scrapped it and just took a handful of the songs and released it as Who's Next. I guess when they realized, like, this isn't working, we need to put out a record, and they just decided to take a handful of the songs and put them out as Who's Next. The album did very well. It's a classic. I mean, every tune on here is great. Bob O'Reilly, Bargain, Love Ain't for Keeping, Getting in Tune, Going Mobile, Behind Blue Eyes. On the back here, you can see my ticket stub from The Who when they reunited in 1989 and did a tour. I saw them at Giant Stadium. I went to that show barefoot. Not making that up. I went to Giant Stadium Who concert barefoot. Why? I don't know. But I was barefoot. And when I left Giant Stadium, going to the car after the concert, going in was not a big deal. Leaving, another story. Broken glass as far as the eye could see. And it took me a long time to get back to the car, needless to say. Don't go to concerts barefoot, y'all. But a great show. And I also have this poster from that tour from when I saw them, 1989, 25th anniversary of the band tour. But great album. Really love it. Then we get the other kind of rock opera, you know, Pete Townshend keeping with that. 1973, we get Quadrophenia. This was initially released in one of those Fat Boy, because it's a 2 CD set, and I just kind of shrunk it down into one set. I still have the original, like, front cover artwork saved away. I wouldn't throw that out, but this is just the cover of the booklet, as you'll see. But yeah, another great, like, kind of concept rock opera kind of thing. A little bit better movie this time than Tommy. I have the DVD, which I'll show you in a minute, but booklet goes into the history again, tells the whole story of the of Jimmy, the Mods, and the Rockers, you know, famous, you know, battle of youth over in England. And this booklet just never ends. But again, you know, as you can see, these booklets are just amazing, have all information you need to know. This is the DVD Criterion put out of the film. Just a really good film. Highly recommend that. But on here, you know, you get The Real Me, 515, Love Reign Over Me. Just an awesome record. Love that one. Then we get 1974, we get Odds and Sods, which is just kind of like a mixture of a lot of different unreleased stuff that The Who had recorded and hadn't put out yet. I remember having this on cassette back in the day. As you can see, they reused some of the artwork from Meaty B, Big and Bouncy. But I really like this. My, you know, favorite track on this was Long Live Rock. This one, they didn't do the booklet. They decided to do like a little kind of fold out and go through all the songs and everything. But cool collection of songs. There's a couple different versions of this with different track listings and different orders. Really good record, Odds and Sods. Really like that one. Then we get 1975. We get The Who by Numbers. And this is another great album. Grab the booklet really quick with this cool, like, kind of paint by numbers, or not paint by numbers, but draw by numbers artwork that John Entwistle did for the cover. And of course, again, MCA did a great job on the accompanying booklet. Can't say enough about it. I'm flipping through pages. This booklet is not easy to flip through, but it goes into all the details. Again, repeating myself, but MCA did a phenomenal job with these. For some of the tracks: Slip Kid, Squeeze Box, Blue, Red, Gray, How Many Friends, There's some live tracks as bonus cuts on this one. As these later ones, you start seeing MCA kind of not going too deep with the bonus tracks as we go on. In 1978, we get their final studio album with Keith Moon. He unfortunately passed away after this album. This is Who Are You? I love this record. I remember it quite well as a kid. My brother playing it. He had the picture disc. I have the picture disc myself. I feel like, you know, in more recent years when I've read stuff about The Who written by like Who, like historians or fanatics, I always feel like I read a lot of times it seems like fans aren't that crazy about this album or not, you know, which surprises me because I always love this album. I always under the impression people really love this album, you know, and there's some great tracks on it. But I just feel like, you know, I've read quite a bit more recently, like people kind of, you know, a little lukewarm on this, which just surprised me, like I said. But I really like it. I mean, the first like side, if it was a vinyl record, I think is all perfect. New Song, Had Enough, 905, Sister Disco, Music Must Change, Trick of the Light, Guitar and Pen, of course, the title track. And there's a few unreleased tunes that are added on here. But again, it's kind of like MCA is kind of not going too deep with the additional tracks. Then 1979, we get the soundtrack to the film The Kids Are All Right. I remember this film being a big deal back when I was a kid. It was one of those first like movies I can remember that were always like shown Friday or Saturday night, like at midnight for people to go to, you know, and check out. And the film's really good. It's some kind of like it's some like fans kind of approached the band about doing it, and they put like a really good film together. It's kind of just covers sort of their history. It's not really like a documentary. There's a pretty good documentary about the band if you want to watch something about their history called Amazing Journey that I'd recommend watching. But this is kind of just like a little mashup of a lot of like moments from their career. It kind of follows a somewhat of like a biographical kind of tale, and you just got all the tracks on here from the film, different live versions and some television appearances and stuff. But yeah, really cool album. And then we get a new drummer. 1981 comes along, and I know some of you fans out there will give me crap about this, but I love Face Dances. Like I mentioned, 1981 is when I'm getting into music and first buying music. I bought this cassette the summer that it came out, and I listened to it nonstop. I love this album. I'll defend it till the end. I know people's complaints about it. They're not big on Kenny Jones. They feel like he wasn't the right drummer, whatever. I love this collection of songs. I think they're all great. I still like this album. I still listen to it top to bottom and still enjoy it. But I get why people aren't big fans of it. I understand a lot of people's issue thinking that The Who should have called it a day after Keith Moon passed away. I understand that, but like I said, I still really, really love this album. You Better You Bet was the first single. Don't Let Go Coat, Quiet One, Did You Steal My Money, You, Another Tricky Day. I mean, I love all these songs on here. And there's a handful of bonus tracks, some live tracks from that time period. Then 1982 comes along, and then The Who kind of do what the fans thought they should have done a little earlier, and they decided to call it a day. They go on a big farewell tour, massive stadiums they're playing and everything. They put out the album It's Hard. I wasn't that crazy about this album back in the day. Like, I was such a big fan of Face Dances when It's Hard was coming out. I was pretty excited to pick it up, and I loved the first single, Athena. But when I got the cassette, it just didn't click with me the way Face Dances did. And I just was kind of like, whatever. I just kind of stashed it away, didn't listen to it all that much. But maybe like 15 years ago or something like that, I returned to the album, gave it another shot, and it's grown on me a lot more. I appreciate it a lot more now than I did back then. Like I mentioned, Athena is really good. Cooks County, Dangerous. I've Known No War is really good. Eminence Front. Eminence Front is the one track I think like got a lot of Who fans actually appreciated from this. And there's a couple of live tracks and stuff put out as well. So that's sort of it for The Who. All of a sudden, 1984 comes along. They put out this live album, Who's Last. I think it's somewhat of a contractual obligation. I don't think any fans really like this. I'm okay with it. It's not bad. I mean, I get it's not like a stellar performance, but you know, I feel like it could have been worse. It's decent, but it definitely kind of felt like something the Who just had to put out because the record label wanted them, or they owed them an album, something like that. It's not too much as far as the liner notes go, you know, but they go through the hits. The funny thing is this was put out by MCA. When they did Face Dances and It's Hard, those were for Warner Brothers. They had a new record contract. So when this comes out in MCA, they don't get any permission to use anything from Face Dancers or It's Hard. So it's all older tunes, you know, what you'd expect. That's Who's Last. And then years and years go by. They do the reunion tour. They do a couple other tours. They seem to have settled into being a touring act, a legacy act, whatever you want to call it. Then all of a sudden, 2006 comes along and they decide to put out some new music, record a new album. John Entwistle, unfortunately, had passed away. So it's just Roger and Pete now. And they put out this album, Endless Wire. Again, Pete is back to that Lifehouse project. He's still kind of trying to work on that and or figure it out or crack it. And this album is not very good. I mean, I don't think there's anything on here that I really can say that I liked. You know, it's really disappointing. It's, you know, I don't know. It's just not a good album. I've tried listening to it a few times and given it another shot, and it's just, I don't know. It's just a mess. You know, the songs aren't very good, and it's just not a good record. I mean, I think Mike Post's theme, I remember kind of liking. It's Not Enough was released as a single. It's okay, I guess, but yeah, it's really disappointing album. And, you know, they just keep touring and everything. And then all of a sudden, years and years go by, and they come back with another studio album called Just Who. Put this out in 2019. This is definitely an improvement over Endless Wire by a lot. I know some Who fans still aren't that crazy about this one. I thought it was good. I really kind of enjoyed this record. I mean, it's just, there's no rock opera. There's not some concept. It's just some songs, some decent songs. And Pete Townshend was always an awesome songwriter. So, you know, just putting together a collection of some good songs shouldn't be that difficult for him. He's a talented dude. And that's what this is. And I like it, you know. I mean, I guess I can understand some people if they're not crazy about it. But I liked it, you know, and I bought it that, you know, right when it came out and listened to it quite a bit when it came out. And I enjoy it. This is a version that Target put out. It has a couple of bonus tracks on it. That's the last thing that they record. It's certainly going out on a better note than Endless Wire. So that's everything in my Who collection. Hopefully this video is not 50 minutes long, but it's a lot, you know. But I appreciate you watching. By all means, share with me your Who memories, your favorite albums, things like that. I'm sure a lot of you out there know the band far better than me. But thank you for tuning in, and shall see you the next time later on.